Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the show. This episode is brought to you by The Wellness Paradigm, a holistic health coaching company shifting the way that women understand and heal their bodies. Through bioenergetic testing, functional lab testing, and functional nutrition, we uncover what traditional approaches often overlook. So you can stop guessing, start healing, and finally feel like yourself again. No more one size fits all protocols, just real answers, deep rooted healing, and the clarity and confidence you deserve to feel incredible. It's time to shift the paradigm of women's health. Now, on to our show. Good morning, Jessica.
Good morning. So happy to be here.
Thank you for spending the morning and chatting with us all about ADHD, the brain, and all fun things. So Jessica actually helps women with ADHD embrace their fancy brains and thrive using a holistic mind-body approach that turns shame into self-compassion. So welcome, and I would love for listeners to understand a little bit more on who you are and how you got started doing this.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm excited to be here. I got started in this after my son was diagnosed with ADHD several years ago, 12 years ago now, something like that. And I jumped into all the research I could find, all the literature trying to understand him and how his mind worked, how to help and support him, and quickly realized a number of things. The first was how familiar it all sounded, which is what led to my own diagnosis about a year later. The second is that everybody in the whole field was going about this whole thing top down, brain first, to get the body cooperating. And my background is in dance. I don't know if that had something to do with it, but I realized I was looking at all of the literature through sort of a physical fitness, body-mind connection lens. Mm-hmm. And I thought, well, I can do this a different way. I can go bottom up, body first to get the brain online. And then the final thing I noticed was how much shame was being piled upon people who think differently. I'm a huge fan of saying that different is good, different isn't less, different isn't necessarily better. It's just good to have many, many differences in the world. I mean, think how boring the world would be if every single car was the same and every single house or flower or anything were the same. It's the same way with brain styles. We need them all at the table to make a beautiful, vibrant world. So that's what launched me into coaching. I started experimenting with myself and my son, trying new and different things that helped and a few things that didn't help. I found myself talking to friends about the things that I was finding effective and the research I was learning. They would come back to me and say, "Oh my gosh, I tried this and it was fantastic. I can't believe it." And so I found myself sort of naturally coaching people in this, and that ignited the spark for me and got me to really focus on how I could make this a value, a service to other people and the world.
I love that. I actually was a professional dancer myself.
Ah.
So, it's funny learning more about somatic work and how important that is and how movement, it's like, I feel like it's just kind of ingrained in us, but how powerful it can be to move and heal. And so, yes, I love that. So I'm curious, when people come to you, what are they primarily wanting to explore? What are they primarily feeling? Let's start there. I don't want the question to be too meaty.
Yeah. I'd say about 2/3 of my clients are 30 and over. So they're approaching sort of this, they're either approaching or they're in this midlife phase where some of them knew about ADHD since they were kids and many did not. So they had developed their own coping mechanisms, either with awareness of the diagnosis or without. They had figured out how to do life in a reasonable way. But as they age, they discover circumstances change. Maybe they get married, maybe they change jobs, maybe they find themselves parents, running households, and so on. Things change. Things change internally with the hormonal shifts in that time of life. And so the things they were doing before to manage and get by and feel okay just are not cutting it anymore. And they come to me and say, I don't know what's wrong with me. I used to feel functional. I used to feel kind of competent. And now just nothing is working. I feel like I'm falling apart. That's the starting place for many of us. Not everybody feels that extreme. Some folks are just looking to make some moderate improvements. Some are using medications and others are not. The good news is that the work we do is really good for all brains, medication or not, ADHD or not. It just happens to be kind of essential for those of us that do have fancy brains.
What would you say? I love the term fancy brain. That's so
Thank you.
that's cute. Um, what would determine someone having a fancier brain versus others?
Oh gosh, well that could be probably a whole episode on its own. Um, I did want to highlight, I think there are differences in gender. There are differences between male ADHD and female ADHD, and they're not necessarily hard and fast. I think a lot of those differences are created by societal norms and expectations about what a woman is quote unquote supposed to be or do versus a man. And I think a lot of it has to do with what we expect of ourselves. There's some of the lesser known traits, let's say, are women, girls with ADHD tend to be a little chatty. They might not have visible hyperactivity, so they may not be kinetic and bouncing off the walls physically, but the H in ADHD is always there. Sometimes it's mental and emotional, sometimes it's physical. Sometimes it's both. That is certainly the case for me. I can't sit still and my brain can't sit still. Women with ADHD tend to display the emotional dysregulation in different ways than guys might. And the other part of it is, I think, going back to that expectations, we expect ourselves and other people expect us to be be put together in a slightly different way from what we might expect of others. Yeah, I'll stop there because again, I don't want to take up our whole time talking about traits and qualities of ADHD.
Well, I think it's, a lot of people have heard this term. It's become a lot more, I don't want to say trendy because that's not really great, but in the last few years, and people are wondering, do I have this, right? Is it just that I have a lot of tabs open because my nervous system is, always on high alert and on functional freeze, or do I actually have this neurodivergent kind of brain? And I think I'd be curious your thoughts on this, because I feel as if today's society, we're just constantly pulled in multiple directions. You know what I mean? And at what point do you draw the line? Obviously, not from a doctor perspective, but to actually explore, like, maybe there's something more.
I see. Yeah. So the difference between garden variety distraction, because the world we live in, versus this is something neurobiological that has been in existence usually in a person's entire life, and now is beginning to create some issues. I actually created a self-assessment tool for this reason. Again, not diagnostic in any way, but it's a list of traits and qualities that people might read and find that they really identify with. If they do, it creates a great set of talking points to then take to a clinician, a diagnostician, to get a real read on what is happening. But the bottom line is this: I think garden variety distraction can be challenging, can be impairing in isolated and really discrete circumstances and incidents. When you have ADHD, though, you find pervasive challenges that affect at least two domains of life, such as work and home, or relationships and self-regulation. You tend to find more difficulty in more places in life. It's not just a matter of, oh gosh, I find it really hard to put down social media. It's a significant challenge with things like getting started on something or even being able to switch tasks. A lot of times we get started on something and we find it difficult to stop that and move to something else. So it's also important to point out that it's a really dynamic disorder. It's not, a dynamic difference. It's not something that looks the same way in everybody. It doesn't even look the same way in the same person over time or in different environments. Does that help answer your question?
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if somebody was coming in, where are kind of the first places that you start with them?
Well, I'm a strength-based coach, so I love to first find out what's going really well. Where do they feel competent? Where do they feel strong and confident? And then we build from there. So instead of looking around for everything that's going wrong and all the places they feel weaker, we want to know what's really going great right now. And a lot of times I'll start people unfamiliar with this strength-based approach. I ask them to read a book by Dr. Edward Hallowell called Super Parenting for ADD. ADD, because the book was written long ago, and even though it's been through revisions, I think the title still remains in the old name of the diagnosis. Even if they're not parents, it's just such a great way to begin to understand a strength-based approach. It talks about mirror traits, which are kind of the flip sides of any challenge that we find ourselves faced with in ADHD. For example, having a whole lot of projects started at one time and getting down on oneself because of a feeling of being unable to finish. When we flip over that challenge, it's really an endless fountain of creativity. People with ADHD tend to have a whole lot of ideas and a whole lot of energy for getting things started. They might need some tips and tricks and tools and strategies for completing, for getting through a project, but we have a whole lot of fire for beginning. And that can be a real strength when it's challenged appropriately. So that I like to start from strength.
I really like that approach. I think it's really easy to always look at what are all my problems, especially when you hire a coach, right? It's like, fix my problems. And that further perpetuates a lot of negative spiraling and, self-talk for people, right? So I'm sure that's something you talk a lot about with people.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's really hard to make something happen or to make a change when we're already feeling crappy about ourselves. Nobody wants to start there.
No. So what would you say, you mentioned like tips or tools or tricks. What are probably the top 2 or 3 things that you find to be most beneficial for women who, are working through more ADHD tendencies?
Yeah. The top one is also the first element in this 4-point framework that I have come up with over the years, and that is movement. Not just any movement, although any movement is helpful. But what I find is when our thinking is stuck, moving the body is the perfect way to get unstuck. So I always tell people, move your body to move your mind, whether you're stuck in paralysis and being unable to begin something or take the next step, or you're stuck in go mode and unable to rest, relax, decompress. Whatever it is, moving the body moves the mind. And in today's society, we find ourselves not moving our bodies as much as we could or should. Again, there are specific ways to do that we find enhance cognition, working memory, focus, and concentration. One example of that is crossing the midline of the body. So if we picture an imaginary line from nose to toes, Anytime we move a limb across that imaginary line, such as moving right hand to left knee and left hand to right knee, then we're integrating both sides of the brain, helping them communicate, cooperate, and work better together to increase focus and concentration. So that's my number one tip: move the body to move the mind. Second would be to feed the brain the food and fuel that it needs. I don't endorse any kind of particular diet. I don't even necessarily recommend certain recipes, but there are some basic guidelines we can follow. A lot of them are common sense approaches that you might hear from any sort of wellness coach. But a lot of them are specific to ADHD. So a couple of examples there might be to make sure you're including protein at every meal and snack, because it is a building block of neurotransmitters. Another might be, especially for us with ADHD, some of us literally forget to eat. So we have to create some kind of external tool or strategy to make sure that we remember every couple or 3 hours, make sure we're getting some kind of meal or snack. Staying hydrated is another example. An easy one that is specific to ADHD is making sure that our magnesium levels are appropriate. You can do this with testing through your doctor. But a lot of us tend to be low on magnesium in the first place, and then certain ADHD medications will lower that even further. So making sure we have enough magnesium is a great way to start.
Love magnesium. That's probably the number one most recommended supplement for almost everybody. But I will say, for those that are listening, there's multiple kinds of magnesium.
Yes.
And so, I don't know what you would suggest. I know glycinate really helps for like calming and sleep, but theorate is also really great for the brain, and citrate if you're constipated. But those are probably the top three.
Right.
But yes, and I will also say, even if this is my little caveat, because I do a lot of hair tissue mineral analysis, even if your magnesium looks fine on blood labs, it doesn't necessarily mean that your body is not deficient in it or needing a little bit more. Supplementing can be really, really helpful when done right. But also on the flip side, magnesium too is a really fun one, because I've had some people get really just like feel terrible on it too. It's like everybody responds different to every supplement. So if you know something, hey, you know what? This doesn't make me feel good. Okay. That's why coaching is really helpful too. Just tinker around. But I love that you make this holistic connection, because as somebody who sees labs and stuff for a lot of neurotransmitters, and it's like the power of keeping our body healthy through nutrition, obviously there's multiple other tools is really invaluable. And sometimes we start from, you said the brain down, and it's like we can do a lot of the things, up in the brain, but if we're not taking care of the vessel, that all of our brain, our gut and brain connection is so, so powerful, right? I think people really underestimate the fact that, what is it? Can't remember the exact statistic, but it's like 70% of serotonin is actually created in, your gut. So take care of your gut, take care of your brain too. So this holistic approach is obviously very close to my heart. So, movement, you have nutrition. Is there anything else somebody's like, okay, I've got that down. I think I'm eating healthy, right? Obviously there's ways to fine tune this.
Right.
I'm moving my body, whatever that means to them. What would kind of be maybe a little bit more of I don't want to say advanced step, but something that you might not think of quite as obvious to kind of help?
Yeah. The third pillar in my foundational practices is metacognition and mindfulness. So really getting to understand how a fancy brain really works and beginning to use that, beginning to leverage that so we can work with our minds instead of against them. Mm-hmm. When I say that, a lot of people immediately jump to, oh, she wants me to meditate. And that meditation is great, huge fan, but it doesn't have to be that. It can be as simple as beginning to notice energetic patterns, to notice thought patterns, and be able to choose differently around those. It can be noticing the ways that, the ways or the things that affect our thinking. For instance, a lot of times with my clients, when they describe to me having trouble getting started at work, especially in the new work from home world, we will create an opening ritual, which is really, when you get down to it, it's really nothing more than habit setting. It's creating appropriate cues within the habit loop, but it, again, is a way to work with our minds instead of against them. So we might use something like a beautifully scented candle, a scent that really speaks to them and helps them feel calm or energized or whatever they want to feel. Using some music and using those two things as a cue for the brain. This is time to start work. Now I'm going to be focused and really get down to business. So metacognition and mindfulness can mean many, many different things, including but not limited to meditation. That's one that I would say is probably not that obvious to some folks. And then the fourth piece is systems, habits, and tools. And these are all the really practical things that we've all been subject to all along, the things that people throw at us when they say, you just need the right planner, you just need the right calendar, you just have to set a timer or whatever it is. Some of those things will work and many of them won't. Most often, though, they'll work if they're adjusted. They'll work if they're tweaked to meet our specific needs. So one example of that is Pomodoro timing. You've probably heard of the cycles, work 10 minutes and then rest for 5, or I think that's the right ratio. Something like that. 20 minutes to 5, or 25 to 5.
It's 25 to 5.
Yeah. Anyway.
Either way.
I've lost track of what the actual ratio is because we do so much adjusting.
Yeah.
That particular traditional Pomodoro timing doesn't work for everybody. Yep. But when we adjust it either longer or shorter, it often can. Mm-hmm. So that kind of thing, taking the practical tools and then adjusting them to meet our particular needs.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, just like anything in the coaching world, like everything really is specific, everybody functions differently. So I love those four pillars. It makes it very clear, approachable. Yeah. I think I would be curious for you, like, what are the things that you have found most impactful for your own personal life?
Oh, wow. Movement for sure. I was never any stranger to that, having danced my whole life. But when I began learning about really specific movement patterns and the effects they can create, that made a big difference for me and for my son, and later my daughter, who also has ADHD. And probably proper nutrition. I am one of those people who either forgets to eat or forgets to eat, gets so hungry that all my brain and body want is high carb, high fat, high processed sugar immediately. And once I began to break that pattern and that cycle, a whole lot changed for me. I was so grateful finally to begin to understand that. I had lived in college, you won't believe this, college dance major, living on Three Musketeers bars and Coca-Cola. Dance 8 hours a day. It was ridiculous. I did it somehow, but it certainly wasn't optimal. I think those are the two things that made the biggest difference for me. I could share a quick story about my son to illustrate the movement piece. When he was in second grade and was first diagnosed, he was trying to learn multiplication with a multiplication table. And there's a pattern in those tables, sort of backwards L, vertical, horizontal type pattern. He wasn't picking up on it and was getting very frustrated. And so I encouraged him just to take a wiggle break. Let's do some push-ups. Let's do some jumping jacks. Let's do some dancing around. And so we just moved free form for about 5 minutes, came back to the multiplication table, and his eyes, when he looked up at me, his eyes were so bright and so big. And he said, "Mom, it lights up." And it was so moving just to understand that that little bit of movement had actually sparked new pathways or created some sort of opening in his mind that he then could see the pattern inherent to a multiplication grid like that. And so that was probably one of the pivotal moments in beginning this whole journey for me.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Really, I think people underestimate how powerful this is.
Yeah.
Whatever ADHD, whether it's, we speak about it a lot on the trauma side of things, on emotion, it's just move things through your body, get it either out or just repattern, reprogram, come back to things. And people are like, I don't have time.
Right.
It's
Right.
like, you could get so much more done if you took a 5-minute break and just like repattern, took a chill, dance, whatever. It really is that important. But I love that story. And I love you sharing too about the things that help with you. I really can't emphasize blood sugar regulation enough.
Oh man.
So thank you for bringing light to that because especially if you have ADHD, I can't tell you how many clients I work with. They're like, I'm just anxious in the middle of the day for no reason. I don't know why. I'm like, because you have an 8, your blood sugar is dropping. Keep that
Mhm.
stable. Suddenly you're less anxious. You can concentrate more
Mhm.
and, you feel better. And bonus, it also helps if body composition is a goal as well. So it's a win-win-win. So, well, I think kind of closing out, is there anything you would like to tell somebody if they're, working through their ADHD or, think they have it, wanting to just optimize their life a little bit better for them or those around them? What would you say?
Yeah. The first thing I would want them to know is that their brains are not broken. Their brains are working just the way they're supposed to. It's the world around us that isn't made for our kinds of brains. But that's changeable. We can work with that. So I want people to know that people of all ages, kids, adults, and everything in between, we all do well when we can. Nobody wakes up in the morning and says deliberately, "Hey, I think I'm going to disappoint everybody that's important to me today and really let myself down by not achieving these things." It just doesn't happen. Everybody does well when they can, and when they can't, that means there's a missing skill or a piece of information. And that's where all kinds of coaching is so valuable. That's where we come in to support and make change and create understanding so that people can feel their best, live their best, love their best, perform their best. And so that's what I'm here to do. And I know you are too. I really appreciate your work in this area as well.
Yes, I love this. Really appreciate you being here. I would love for people to know if they wanted to find you, connect with you, where is the best place?
Probably at my website, which is fitology.com, FIT-OLOGY.com. It has everything there that you would need.
Amazing. I will put that down in the show notes so you guys can easily click on it and find her. And I want to thank you again for being on the show. And if you guys found this helpful, would absolutely love it. If you left a review or sent either of us a message just saying, oh, I found this little nugget that I really enjoyed. I know I certainly love hearing, and I'm sure, you would as well. So thank you guys for being here, and I will catch you guys on the next show.
Thank you.